All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott Horton. And I was realizing the other day, I took a few weeks off there. Actually had some time to think for a change. It occurred to me, it's a real responsibility having a show called Antiwar Radio. It precludes anyone else from having a show called Antiwar Radio. And that means if it's going to be called Antiwar Radio, it's got to be the absolute best, most informative, most hard-hitting, most professional, anti-war production that could possibly be done on a daily basis. And I guess I already knew that, but I thought about it again. So I'm going to try even harder to do my even bester for you. Somebody who makes it easy. Somebody who helps make it easy to do so on this show is Grant Smith. Grant, is that your other phone ringing in the background?
Yeah, that's the U.S. pardon attorney. We've got a FOIA in to get the Pollard release. But go ahead. I'll call him back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're live, so we're first. Grant Smith is the mucky muck, the president, the commander-in-chief, the boss of IRMEP, IRMEP.
The big kahuna.
.org. That's
right.
the Institute for Research Middle East Policy, and you can find much of what he writes at antiwar.com, and just Google up Grant Smith. You'll find him. But today, I'm looking at a piece that's not by Grant Smith, although it's been filled with evidences and proofs and documents in hypertext format by Grant F. Smith. But it is the declassified statement on Jonathan Pollard by Caspar W. Weinberger. Hey, wait, isn't that guy a convicted felon for selling weapons to the Iranians and then using the profits to back right-wing death squads in El Salvador and Nicaragua?
Yeah, we'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks, I hope, because the Pentagon just released 50 pages on Iran-Contra, so...
Oh, good deal.
Yeah.
So this guy is a felon and a killer, just so that we're clear.
Yeah, there are no good guys in this story.
Okay, good. But now, so who's Jonathan Pollard and what's this here?
Well, yeah, Jonathan Pollard was a Navy intelligence analyst and heavy into sort of fantasies about becoming a Mossad officer who began funneling classified information. He worked in an anti-terrorist unit, but he took all of the codes the U.S. uses for spying on radio frequencies, the entire attack plan against the Soviet Union, information about U.S. spies that were working in the Cold War, and passed them on to Sela and Rafi Eaton, who he considered his heroes, the Israelis basically, who began to use it to leverage up a position for their own purposes. So the documents that we're obtaining from the District Court and the District of Columbia, few of which appear anywhere on the Internet, really document the time between his plea agreements. He pled guilty after he was caught red-handed, after denying for a little bit of time that he was a spy. But documenting the period between his publicity campaign with the help of Wolf Blitzer to get out of jail and just simply be let free to Israel, and the time that he was sentenced to life in prison, which happened in March of 1987. So that document that Antiwar put up is the first of those.
All right, so this is basically the former Secretary of Defense trying to convince the judge to go heavy on this guy, not light.
Right. Weinberger's team at the Department of Defense was reeling, because basically they thought the Israelis were their friends, so much so that they could be, partners in crime in the Iran-Contra subversion of the Boland Amendments, doing all sorts of deals for Palestinian captured arms to be shipped to the Nicaraguan Contras. So they thought they were in well with the Israelis when all of a sudden this whole scandal blows up and they find out that they've lost all of the family jewels of American intelligence. And so Weinberger's four-pager that was released is not the real damage assessment that Americans should be able to review. That damage assessment is 46 pages. It was submitted to the court on January 6th. It's classified. It's 46 pages. The court sealed it, and if anyone's going to release it, it's going to have to be the Department of Defense. But that tells their best assessment up until that point of time of what the total exposure to the United States was for Israel having gotten a hold of this. And they make the point as well that although the Israelis were saying basically, well, we'll never give any of this away to your enemies, you know, they have spies inside of their government for foreign governments as well as the U.S. does. So there's a big argument in there as well, allegedly, about how no one could ever make a guarantee like that, that the sanctity of intelligence should have never been violated, blah, blah, blah. But that's the document that should really come out before.
Isn't that part already kind of disproven? Because after all, there were, I forget if it was Seymour Hersh or who it was that reported that dozens of CIA agents and assets were rolled up by the Soviets.
Yeah, that's what they say. But, I mean, and of course, the Department of Defense, 18 or 20 months after the theft of the information couldn't really have probably done a damage assessment anyway. And Pollard's defense was, hey, well, there's no harm here. Nothing's happened, It's only now. I think if anyone were going to do a big project, it would be to get the 46-pager and do the damage assessment based on that within released Soviet files, counterintelligence files, to see what really happened. Because, Seymour Hersh wrote about that. Edwin Black, who's a really good writer.
Yeah, he wrote IBM and the Holocaust.
Yeah, he wrote a really down to the nitty-gritty piece about the sordid publicity campaign and the damage assessment and all of that. So between the two of them, they did do a good job, but they did a good job up until a certain point. And the fact that so many, Israel lobby groups in the United States are pushing for his release now, as well as the Israeli government has now filed a formal petition. We don't know whether it's with the president only or with the pardon attorney like they're supposed to. We'll know that soon. But, now that there's this drive, there's clearly a need to update that damage assessment.
When we come back from the break, I'll ask you to take us through this declassified statement by Caspar Weinberger on Jonathan Pollard. But I guess to wrap up this segment in the next 2 or 3 minutes here, can you tell us the most about what you already know of the damage that was actually caused? Well, because on one hand, we hear that, come on, it was no big deal at all. On the other hand, we hear that it was as bad as Aldrich Ames or Robert Hansen.
Yeah, the biggest single thing was the radio frequency theft. I mean, it's a tragedy that agents might have been killed and all of that, but basically the U.S. had this multi-billion-dollar investment in radio frequency policy and monitoring and usage that was all basically just rolled up and given away. And so that not only allowed the Israelis to avoid detection by the U.S. for their own espionage activities, but, in the wrong hands, it really posed a serious threat to the United States. So that was, a lot of people who analyze this think that was probably the biggest single thing, because it had nothing to do with the Middle East. It was kind of like the crown jewel of the United States intelligence community.
Now, when there was a lot of pressure on Bill Clinton to let Pollard go back during Oslo in the 1990s, the noise was pretty loud that you better not do this, because there are so many people in the military, the FBI, and the CIA who will be so mad you'll be betraying the entire, permanent bureaucratic executive branch of America's government and making them all your enemy. Tell me that Barack Obama is still facing that kind of pressure, please.
I don't think so. I haven't heard anybody.
And the Likud is trying to tie this to the peace talks right now.
That's the only way they can, because it's not going to happen otherwise.
I'm sorry, man. I don't have that music turned up loud enough. Yeah. All right. So, everybody, we're talking with Grant.